Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 12 p.m. BST, every day of the week, where we discuss all things to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to make money by leveraging the internet and the latest technologies. I'm your host, Bchek. I'm a former teacher and commercial litigator in the UK. Now I collect NFTs, I trade NFTs, and I lend against them too. I'm the author of The Snapshot, which is pinned up top. It goes out daily on Twitter and one time per week in newsletter form. I'm joined by my legendary co-host, Legendary, the OG NFT collector, the airdrop extraordinaire, and the trusted Web3 advisor of artists, brands, and businesses. Delighted to say we have good friends of the show with us up top. We got Riggs, we got Kusho, we got Wiz. Cannot wait to get into a broader discussion on what has taken place in the last 24 hours today. But before we get there, just a reminder, nothing that any of us say here is financial advice. This modern market is exceptionally risky. No one really knows anything for sure. So please do proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, Legendary, how are you doing this morning after you have left me on YouTube? I'm alone. This is weird.
GM, I am struggling with the weirdest internet issue I've ever had. It's randomly that some websites are working. I can Google, I can access news, I can open Telegram, but I can't access Discord. StreamYard isn't working, OpenSea isn't working, BigTime isn't working. It is very weird. I did reset the router, and as soon as I change to my hotspot and try to basically connect to those websites via my hotspot, it is working, and it's the same on my PC. So it is not the MacBook, it's something with the internet, and I have no idea what that could be.
What have you been doing on the internet, Legendary? What have you been up to? There are some type of restrictions going on. What have you been up to?
Just being a Web3 degen. It seems like my internet doesn't want me to trade on OpenSea, but it allows me to access Blur.
Well, the thing is, OpenSea used to go down all the time, right? Anyway, OpenSea not being running, that could be just anything. That could be another day in Web3, but maybe the other ones, maybe you've been gaming too much. Is this a sign from above? You did say the other day, how many hours did you spend on Sunday doing some Web3 gaming? Something like a high number.
It was like 1 hour, I think. I mean, you could also add a 0 to that, and it would be more accurate in terms of the length of the Discord call, with a couple of breaks in between. But I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, a 10 hour Discord / gaming session is pretty significant. What was the game? Was it multiple games you were playing or just one in particular?
It was Big Time mostly.
Interesting. And what's going on with Big Time at the moment? Why is that because we've been speaking about gaming.
is sending the thumbs down one after the other.
So, I mean, we've been speaking about gaming a lot. We spoke about the ZTX airdrop related to their kind of gaming ecosystem, which has been very significant. We think that's going to be an area of significant growth moving forward. Why is it that you've kind of focused your attention on Big Time? Is there any reason other than that you just like it?
I truly like the game. That's it. I mean, yes, you have the leaderboard, and yes, there will be multiple millions airdropped in tokens, also worth multiple millions in US dollars to the leaderboard, which you can basically farm by crafting stuff, by playing the prestige dungeons, etc., etc. But it's just a good game. I just enjoy it.
Interesting. Kusho, welcome with us. Why are you against Legendary's 10-hour decision? Are you against the 10-hour commitment, or are you against Big Time?
I'm against not being invited to play Big Time for 10 hours.
I see.
All right. The next code that I get, Kusho, because randomly I get invite codes. I'm going to DM it to you as soon as I have one. I'm not going to use it to engagement farm on X.
Kusho, have you? Is it because you haven't started playing yet, or you want to get in, or you've been playing? You just need that invite.
I've been playing.
He's been playing already, man. He doesn't need an invite code.
Man, you know how these things happen when you know someone and they just betray you? It's like that. It's like that.
I know exactly what you mean, Kusho. I invited Legendary to the YouTube stream today, and he just didn't come. Well, he did come. It just wasn't working. Maybe there'll be other technical issues for why he can't make it another time. Good stuff. Good little bit of betrayal to start the show today. Is there any betrayal in the news today? Kind of, but also a little bit of redemption in some respect. We're going to get into that in a moment. But before we get into the news, please, as always, help us out by clicking that comment button in the right-hand corner where you can retweet the spaces. And as always, if you want to follow along, the first slide of the snapshot is pinned up top. It has the details I'm about to share. Please do like it if you find that it brings you some value today. So let's get into it, starting with the price action. Everything's kind of consolidating after a lot of rises in the last week. We've got Bitcoin down 2% at 34K, ETH down a few percent at 1.78, Solana at 32.3, Ape down a few percent at 1.3. NFT volume, guys, hate to break it to you, but it's up again, 3 days in a row. Total 13.9 million, Blur at 9.1, OpenSea at 3.1. Getting into the headlines, number one, a bit of a positive story here. Yuga awarded $1.5 million and legal fees in case against Ryder Rips and Pauly. Going to get into that in a little bit. Number two, Dream OS launches first Web3 native operating system to address UX failure of crypto. That sounds like a pretty interesting product. I'm going to explain what's going on there and if we think that would be useful. And then finally, Claynosaurz launches Plushies. We've obviously seen Pudgy Penguins do very well taking the plushie route. Now we have Claynosaurz doing the same thing, and seems like it's been received pretty well. Getting into the floor prices and the top sales, we have CryptoPunks at 45 ETH, Bored Apes at 27.3, up 3%, Mutants at 5.2, up 3%, DGods down 6% at 3.1, Captains at 3.7, Azuki at 5, Penguins at 5.1, Moonbirds up 6% again at 2 ETH, Nouns at 27 ETH, and top sales, 2 purple hair CryptoPunks today, both selling for 63 ETH. That is $112,000 legendary. That is the price action. Those are the headlines. Which numbers are you enjoying?
Oh, enjoying.
Yes.
Then I have to change my answer. I was prepared to say which numbers are standing out to me.
Okay, well, let's have a bit of both.
I am enjoying to see Moonbirds up again, obviously. I am enjoying that.
Do you know why, legendary?
Why I'm enjoying it?
No,
because
no,
I'm a holder.
No, I know that. I'm saying, do you know why they're up?
No, I don't.
So I was talking to someone about it yesterday and we did some digging. I haven't verified this. I'm trying to see if they're in the audience to verify. No, they're not. But basically, I don't know if it's like 100% this, but it's all flooring protocol. Like it's all like the whole rise has been because of them, basically. But you can't complain, right? You'll take it when it happens.
Gotta take the win. And I thought about it because we talked about it yesterday. I think we talked about why SEPI seals haven't been affected by that so much, which I believe that one of the reasons might be that the SEPI seals numbers just aren't accurate because so many of them are staked. So the holder numbers are skewed as well. And that just doesn't perfectly reflect on Flooring Labs yet. And this might be a reason why people are holding back on it. Interesting.
Legendary, want to hear, I can't remember if that's the one you enjoyed or the one that stood out. Want to hear what numbers stood out to you in a second. Riggs, want to give you a chance to come in there as our resident Moonbirds expert. Do you want to rebut the idea that it's all one person and it's actually because Moonbirds are just amazing?
Well, I mean, that's a given, right? I mean, Jesus Christ. GM, by the way, no, a big portion of it is flooring protocol. The other, which I am not a proponent of, but it is what it is. There's been 2 DAO proposals that have been $50,000 DAO purchases of additional Moonbirds. They've gone through about 25,000 of the 100,000 that's been approved. So there's still actually $75,000 roughly that the DAO is going to be continuing to buy Moonbirds. So
interesting.
There's still some additional money that's going to be spent to buy those floors up. And so we've proven this time and time again that that's not a sustainable way to do things. So
sure.
I'm not a proponent of it, but just the facts are the facts.
Man, thank you so much for that context. That's super helpful. A big question, I think, because I remember when Pixel Vault did this for a very small amount of time. Also, they allocated some capital to buy. In fact, they didn't necessarily allocate to buy floors. They said, well, we're just going to give certain people a bit of license to buy some floors, some mid-rares, some rares, trying to get them at the best price. And then they also obviously said, well, don't deploy all the capital in one go because that would just rip the price up unsustainably. Maybe they have to take their time. Was there any planning like that built into the proposal to say, look, we're going to do a tranche of 25, then we're going to do another tranche of 25? Was that kind of set out, or is it more see how it goes?
No, the DAO proposals were like the weakest written DAO proposal in the world. It was literally like three lines of this, but the team, because it's not a real DAO, it's like a hybrid.
Sure.
Right? The team kind of controls it.
I see.
And so what they actually chose to do, which kind of fucked the DAO, is they chose to start weething, and they just put a bid wall up. Well, then flooring protocol came up. So the floor actually went up prior to the DAO being able to buy the birds at a lower price. Yeah. So now it's we're in like a predicament. So it's just kind of like Swift kicking the old cojones there, but
that's what we live for, Riggs. That's what we live for in this space. We don't want things to just be easy, right?
100%. Absolutely.
Another quick question on this, because I'm fascinated by this. We've actually been speaking about DAOs a lot on the show in the last few days. We touched on it a lot yesterday, talking about how on-chain governance, I think, is becoming cool. It will become more fun and important, and people will want to accrue power there so they can flex that and just accrue power. Just like in the real world, people trend towards politics once they have enough money, and it's like, well, now I need to use this influence instead. Tell me about, or just to the extent that you're aware, then the DAO, you said it's a kind of hybrid / it's actually the team running it. Is there a voting process? Because you don't have a coin yet. So is it one per Moonbird holder, or is it an oddity? Are oddities involved, the other NFTs? What's the basic voting practice?
Yeah, so Moonbirds and Mythics have capabilities to vote and propose. Moonbirds get 3 votes, Mythics get 1 vote. In order to hit quorum, you got to have 10% of all birds voting. So as every day, Mythics are revealed, right? And so that quorum continues to go up. But we're not governing anything. Basically, what the team did is they put $2 million into a treasury and said we had the capability to put proposals in to ideally build things, right? But the proposals have been interesting. There's been a few good ones. There's been a lot of bad ones, just like with most DAOs. But at this point now, I've seen the majority of things getting approved to sweet Moonbirds. There was one approved for $50,000 of Mythics going into the treasury. So I feel like the community, this is the problem with DAOs, right?
Yeah.
If the community begins to get frustrated, look at Nouns DAO, things like that, they can start to use the funds to find ways to benefit themselves.
Sure.
And because the community gets to the point of being fractured and this frustrated, they're going to say that, and the majority of people say, yeah, this is better for me anyways, so I'm going to do it. And then that money just kind of dissipates, and I don't know what happens to this DAO if the money goes away. There's no real reason for continuing it, so we'll see what happens.
Well, I think at that point, Riggs, you ask for another 2 million top up, and then you buy the rest of the supply.
Fact. Can we double it up this time, K-Ro? Can you give us 4 mil this time? Hook it up, bro.
Yeah, we promise we'll come up with an actual purpose this time. We won't just buy all of the supply. No, look, you make a really, really good point. This is one of the things a lot of people are struggling with. In the absence of an actual vision and purpose for the DAO, people revert to buying the floor. Let's buy the floor, do a buyback. And this is not the same as when companies do it because they believe that, because they're such strong believers in their own stock and therefore think that it's a good deal. It's just not the same, in my opinion. Legendary, want to hear your quick thought on this, because I think this is a fascinating thing. We've been talking about how DAOs or hybrid DAOs have been operating recently. And then want to hear what else kind of caught your eye on the number side before we get into the headlines.
Yeah, I absolutely also loved the discussion that we had yesterday on on-chain governance, on how DAOs are getting more and more political, where they've always been political, but it seems to get more to the public attention. And I kind of don't know what changed. I mean, Leon had that post yesterday where he said, he spoke to a founder, a successful project, but the DAO never really worked, never got the engagement that they initially wanted to have.
Sure.
And I still think that is a massive issue, but somehow I feel like, at least I might be biased because it's my timeline, obviously, but I do feel like we speak more and more about DAOs on the timeline in the Web3 space right now, which is quite an interesting development. But again, I might be completely biased on that.
Yeah, look, I'm in agreement with that. I think the ones which have been around for a little while have matured enough to the point where people are coming with proposals which are maybe slightly better. Of course, as Rig said, there's a lot of nonsense. You're going to have to sift through bad proposals. I think that's okay. That's part of the process. But ultimately, there's way too much money in a number of these DAOs for them to be ignored. So on some level, I kind of appeal to everyone in the audience to be like, look, if you are looking at these various proposals and thinking, do you know what? That's poor. Like, it's a low effort. It's not particularly interesting. It's not innovative. Then make a proposal. Just at least practice, because the way that I got funded from Little Nouns DAO, and people know my newsletter is sponsored by Little Nouns, is like the first time I did it in terms of the process, I didn't win. I didn't get the funding that I tried to get the first time. I think other people got their proposals were voted ahead of mine, but I kind of stuck around. I spoke to people, and then it becomes like a little bit more of a political thing. Like, look, if I had not won and then thrown my toys out of the pram and said like, oh, you guys are rubbish, like mine was the best thing, why didn't you fund me? You should fund me now. Then maybe that's not how to get people and win their favor, right? But if you kind of stick around, show that you're well intentioned, try and figure out what people are like as people, humans, what they like, what they dislike, maybe what's good about your proposal, what could have been improved, and just get to know people on a human level, then then doors start to open, in my opinion. So that's the way that I would look at it. I still see it as a huge opportunity and something worth thinking about. That's my reflection. Legendary, don't know if you got any thoughts on that before you want to say what else caught your eye.
Nothing to add to that without being redundant.
Sounds good.
What else caught my eye? That was DGods. Yesterday, someone dumped 100 DGods into bids, and I think that more people followed those dumps. And I don't know the background behind this, to be honest, which is annoying. But do you have any more context on this, or did you see that massive dump into bids happening?
I saw Whale tweeted about it, but then I also saw that he said it was the Blur wallet or something. It was like the Blend wallet. I don't know why there would have been that many liquidations though yesterday. So I'm not 100% sure. To be honest, a 6% decrease, DGods at 3.1. My main thought on it is that that's not, like, I've been saying for a while, I think there are people very quietly trading these collections very happily. Like, there is money to be made right now trading NFTs when there is 0% royalty, because these, like, I do the numbers every single day. Captains is now 3.7. The other day it was like 4.2. A week ago it was 3.1. DGods keep going between like 3.1 and 3.7 or something. Azukis were at 4. They're now at 5. Penguins is the different one because they've just been like on this steady rise. They keep getting better and keep legging up. Whereas the other ones are like ranging with like 0.5 differences or something like that. So to answer your question, I don't know 100%, but this doesn't feel like a significant departure from where it's been. Actually, to be fair, it's getting close to 2 now, and I don't remember it being at 2. So you're right. It's probably at the very low end of the bracket, but yeah, opportunity there for me, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. There's definitely traders being very, very happy in this market, and the low liquidity is helpful for prices to be obviously more volatile, for arbitrage opportunities to make. But you also should be knowing what you do in that market if you want to trade it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, when you know, at the early stages of when there's opportunity, and we've been speaking about this for a week or two now, it feels like there's opportunity again in the market. You can't expect people who are, you know, just quietly, happily trading these things to tell you explicitly. Like the majority of really successful traders, I think, or at least the ones who did it for a while in 2021, they're not going to tell you right away, like, oh, here is my strategy, this is what I'm doing. They'll tell you at the end. You know, you'll see one of those threads where it says like, this is how I made 100 ETH doing this over the last few months. And that's when you're going to find out about it. And then that's when everyone's going to know about it. And then that's when the opportunity disappears because everyone will try to do it. So that was one of my reflections there. Let's get into the headlines, because we've talked about the numbers. We like to talk about the numbers because the numbers are looking quite nice at the moment, to be perfectly honest. But let's get into the headlines. Legendary, which one do you want to start with?
Let's start with the title of the show. Let's get into the Yuga versus Ryder Ripps and Pauly lawsuit, respectively, into the result of it.
Nice. Do you want to do that, or shall I?
Happy if you set it up, because I still struggle to get websites to work and have sensible context to provide.
Okay, let's do it. So, I mean, I think people knew this already. Ryder Ripps and Pauly, who made all kinds of accusations against Yuga Labs, have been ordered to pay Yuga Labs over $1.5 million in damages. They must also transfer control to the Ryder Ripps Bored Ape smart contract to Yuga. Remember, they did a derivative. I can't remember 100% what it was. Did they just turn them in a different direction or something? And then they claimed that it was fine and it was original because they changed the direction. But ultimately, that's not. It was like infringing on the IP. And Gordon Gunner, one of the founders, said this. He said 1.5 million plus legal fees and another 100K. For all of their bullshit. Bad day to be a scammer, good day to be an ape. Appreciate the note from the judge on how absurd this has all been. And this is what the judge had to say. The judge said, in addition, the defendants unnecessarily and inappropriately made disgraceful and slanderous statements about Yuga, its founders, and its counsel during litigation, including calling Yuga's counsel criminals who support racism, anti-Semitism, bestiality, and pedophilia, and accusing them of using cartoons to market drugs to young children. These statements were egregious and far exceed the bounds of acceptable conduct. I thought that was an interesting additional note from the judge on kind of exceptional comments, in the sense that, you know, moving beyond the actual points of the case, just wanting to make these additional comments on top. Legendary, what are your thoughts on this? And then I kind of want to broaden the discussion as to what people, leaders, founders have to deal with in this space.
Yeah, that's definitely something I wanted to ask you first, but you kind of answered it. That kind of commentary is rather rare. That goes beyond the case and has all that details and kind of even a strong opinion on more context on the case. That's not typical to find that, right?
Not necessarily. Like sometimes judges will, I mean, again, I was a lawyer in the UK, not for very long. I did actually go to trial in my short period of time as a practicing lawyer. Judges can ramble. Like judges kind of get to do what they want. So yes, they'll have to publish their judgment, and there'll be certain things in there. But then there are other ways for them to get out anything else that they feel like saying. So it's not uncommon for them to be able to say just whatever else they want to say as well.
Fair enough. I think one of the the most entertaining commentaries that I saw on that case, before we get into the broader discussion, as you mentioned, was someone saying that, as a part of that lawsuit, obviously all the smart contracts, everything has to be moved into the hands of Yuga, which now makes the apes or the ape ripoff, the Rider Rips apes, an official a smart contract officially owned by Yuga Labs.
Yeah, I think someone in the snapshot asked me how you'd be able to, like, where can we buy them? Or they said, like, are there any markets trading them, or any marketplaces where they're being bought and sold at the moment? I don't think that they are, because I suspect that they were taken down as part of this whole process. But you're right. Now that they're official ones, I would not be surprised that once that ownership moves over, that people would want to buy them for historical relevancy and also just as a joke as well. So yeah, I don't know what price they're trading at, but I bet if they were ever to trade again, they would go up in price. What do you think? I don't think they would let them out. It would just be, I know it would be kind of a fun cultural meme to then suddenly start speculating on those, but I think Yuga are just far beyond that now. And
oh yeah, absolutely.
That's
absolutely Yuga is far beyond that. But I also can see a world where, like, in 5 years, we had the 2021, 2022 NFT archaeologist digging up collections from the past, and someone in 2026 coming back making a bold thesis on, these were the first ripoffs that were seized by court, and trying to make that an NFT archaeology case.
Yeah, 100%. Also, I feel like the founders of Yuga, like, have a bit of a sense of humor, have a bit of a good handle on the culture, and maybe on some level, this is pure speculation, but on some level they'd probably be cool with it. But then at the same time, they're just so much bigger now, and that type of thing just would not be an appropriate step. And they would ultimately know that. I'm sure there's like a small part of them that would just be like, well, it'd be fun to see what happened, because we would think it'd be fun. Riggs, your hand is raised. What do you think of this proposal to let them out into the wild?
I think it would be funny, but I see 0% chance of this happening.
Absolutely.
It can actually impact their IP agreements with their current holders.
Sure.
Which was what the origination of this lawsuit really started as, and then it obviously grew and grew and grew and grew. So I think that would be a massive mistake. Now, if they wanted to find the people that have the apes and give them to them as their matching version, kind of as a value add, okay, maybe. But I would do it similar to how Doodles did, like Space Doodles, where you find a way to connect it to the ape, and it's not tradable. If they sell the ape, it goes with the ape.
Sure.
Because otherwise, I think you're taking away what you have sold, the value of IP. So
yeah,
that would be my take.
I agree with you. It would be deeply inappropriate, and just way more headache than it would be worth. Just a funny thought, because we are slightly deranged in that way, and it's funny to see crazy things happen every now and again. But as you say, not on the horizon. The bigger question I wanted to ask, Legendary, and maybe this is something that anyone else will be able to weigh in on, is I was speaking to I did my chimpreneurship interview with G-Funk the other day, 2 days ago on Wednesday. It was a really great chat of like what a founder in this space, particularly a prominent founder, has to go through as part of the kind of roller coaster ride in this space. And he referenced, and I actually saw the other day, a tweet from NFT Nick, who's obviously one of the founders of the morning show, where he said something like building out in this space is like, doing your work in public and having your holders stone you or something at the same time. And it does make you think, like, in what way can all of this stuff be justified? And I know there's like a big prize, and the Yuga people are maybe most well placed to deal with it all, given that they've been so successful from a product standpoint, but also from a financial standpoint. But for the other people, like, is it excessive? Like, is it like being stoned by the people? Do you think that's too dramatic? Do you think that's fair? And do you think, like, what's the future way for people to do this stuff in a less combative way with their holders?
That's a very good and very difficult question. I think the majority of this problem still stems from the point that there is an expectation mismatch often. Are we holders? Are we early investors? That's still not yet clear, because kind of the whole hypothesis of, any trend that we're seeing right now is being built on we are early, mass adoption is coming, and people seeking for an advantage by just being first at doing something.
Sure.
And now people also having that historical context of how a bull market in 2021, 2022 could have looked like. And I think, yes, it is a strong statement by G-Funk, but on the other hand, Pixel Vault was kind of one of the first big ecosystems to fail and get back up. To have to fail is a strong word, but still they failed, and they still obviously had the runway, the team, the budget to consolidate and reboot, to have a fresh launch, and to be the first ones who want to climb back. But it's difficult. It's something that also, like, Frank from D-Labs often spoke about, that he went back and forth on sharing things in public, then not sharing anything because he was afraid of being copied, or because the public opinion then was too strong if things were publicly shared. I don't know if there's like a one-fits-all solution going forward with that, especially for a project that is already up and running. If you start fresh, it might be different. But even if you look at, projects like Memeland, which we discussed yesterday, looking at the tokenomics white paper that said there's zero promise that anything will happen, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you still have expectations, in the holder base being created by people on the timeline, by KOLs, by Discord messages, by people talking about the massive 9gig ecosystem of the company in the background, and just people enjoying the vision of what it could be. So I don't think there's an easy solution to that.
Yeah, I love how in this space it's like, so wait, you're telling me that there are no expectations, therefore what I'm hearing is that I should have very, very big expectations. That
everything is a psyop, right? Everything is reverse psychology. But the thing is, we often played into that. Look at how many protocols said, we are not going to do an airdrop. And the two of us know best, doing our airdrop guides for now, 69, 70 weeks. Knowing that this is something that protocols just say to not incentivize airdrop hunters, and to have a more genuine user base for when they actually want to do an airdrop. So often it's also like very accurate to, to go for that reverse psyop or reverse psychology thesis. It's a monster we created ourselves, kind of.
Yeah, that's true. It's pretty nuts. Riggs, your hand is raised. What's your thought on this, the founder's dilemma in Web3?
Yeah, I think it's real. I've had several conversations with prominent leaders in the space. I mean, I was just having one literally yesterday with a top 10 PFP project founder, and he is at the point, like, things have gotten really toxic with the space, the demands, the feeling of basically being an indentured servant to holders. And he was like, there's a group of founders that have had several conversations that it's at the point where they're going to go build a business and focus on themselves. And honestly, if the holders don't like it, fuck off. And so those conversations are happening because of how sometimes I think the problem is not a one-way street. I think the problem's a two-way street. I've shared that, where, when founders overhype things, when they set expectations too high, they have to take ownership. But then at the same point, we as holders, we have to look ourselves in the mirror and take ownership. And if we've lost money, we lost money, right? It doesn't provide you the right to threaten them, to dox where they live, to do this. And by the way, that founder I'm talking about is not moonbirds. It is not proof.
Sure.
I just want to make that very clear.
Yep.
And so I think that you are going to see eventually these teams just focus on building out businesses that are Web 2 driven primarily, because that's where the money is. And the concept of value to holders is going to slowly dissipate if we don't see changes in the way that we behave. And so I think it's actually a bigger issue than a lot of these founders are willing to say, because of the possible outcry that would come from it. So I think that we are like it's kind of like if you've been dating somebody for a long time and you both know that you want to break up, but you're unwilling to say it. And so you like avoid the conversations and it gets worse and worse and worse. Well, I think we're avoiding the conversations and it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And eventually founders are going to be looking to sell, look to get out. You're already seeing that at times. And so I love this conversation. I was talking about it yesterday on the lunch break as well. It's a big issue.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I mean, just to take the metaphor further, on some level, when you know things are wrong in a relationship, yeah, okay, neither of you wants to break up, but it's kind of like you've bought a multi-million dollar house together, representing the equity which you clearly have in this company, and you're like, well, I am not leaving. I'm not leaving. If you want to leave, then you leave. But I can't leave because I've spent all this time and money and effort building this thing, which definitely has value, right? Like we've seen some of these mergers and acquisitions recently, where even for projects which are not working because founders have either got burnt out, unhappy, not able to progress the company, like there's still significant value in the IP, in the community. So I guess it's almost like a stalemate between some founders and their holders, where it's like, well, look, I can't leave. I can't leave either. You can't leave. So let's see where we go. Legendary, let's move on to the next headline. We've got a couple more interesting ones to get into. Then we're going to do, of course, the Web3 roundup and Creator Corner focus as well, to get you up to speed with what else has been happening in the space in the last 24 hours. Let's get into this Dream OS, Legendary. Do you want to set that up, or have you been able to access that? I'm not sure. Otherwise, I can.
Yeah. No, I've been able to access that. In the
This
meantime,
looked really cool.
It is really cool. In the meantime, I also figured out the internet issue. It's my network provider that has issues with all pages that are hosted via Cloudflare.
Cool.
And you kind of see if Cloudflare is an issue, just can't access shit in the world. Anyhow, moving on to DreamOS.
Yes.
It is a pretty fascinating concept.
So what is it?
Trying to break it down. It is the first Web3 native operating system. So it is an OS that is natively or has been natively created with Web3 in mind. And if you look at it, or if you try to understand what that means, I think it's most helpful to just look at a couple examples that they are providing. You have a file explorer on Windows, you have a file explorer on Mac, and on DreamOS, your file explorer is basically your NFTs. So you can kind of manage your NFTs just like computer files by, if you, instead of deleting them, you would burn them, you could send them to someone else, etc. Instead of having your wallet address, you have the Dream ID, kind of similar to ENS, just a bit more powerful. Instead of the App Store, you have a Dapp Store that integrates with games, that integrates with wallets, with decentralized exchanges. You have a hub where you can share all of your social links and manage them in one place. What else do you have in there? Obviously, you have wallet integrations that work cross-chain. So basically, it is an OS that has all the features you need to navigate the Web3 space and is built with those at the center of it. I think it's been able to test it for quite a while. The first reports that I saw about them are like, I think almost a year ago when I heard about it first. And it is fascinating, but it's also the question to me is, in terms of user adoption, I think it has a very, very high barrier because obviously you're used to, either using Windows, Mac, Linux, whatever it is, you have to have a lot of trust when it comes to those things. I feel like still one of the main reasons why people are very comfortable using MetaMask is because it's just the most popular wallet. Again, I know this is more than a wallet, but it's just about that trust factor, right? So similarly, there is Frame SH as a product, which works also on macOS, Windows, Linux. It is a system-wide integration, so you can continue using your MacBook, but you have a system-wide injection of that tool that also allows you to use Web3 more natively than just having to connect your MetaMask as a browser extension. I also remember the first time that when I heard about that, there wasn't like a lot of feedback or information to be found online. So it just had trust issues, installing and using it.
Sure.
And it's the same with DreamOS. So first of all, you also would have users either using a dedicated machine for their crypto, which is a good thing to do, but I don't think that a lot of people do that. And it's certainly not something that you would expect people to do on a massive basis. And then you also have just the trust issue that you have to trust the security of that all, which I definitely don't have the competence to, evaluate that.
Yeah.
But in principle, the UX looks pretty clean. The features are great and dope. So it is a cool thing to be building, but it's always very niche in my opinion.
Yeah, I love all of those points. That entirely encapsulates how I feel about it. I think it's really cool, but I would love for you to test it out before me. That is my personal opinion. Yes, I think it's difficult for these products because, as you say, it's the crypto UX is pretty bad as things stand, and so it is a very real attempt at solving some of those problems. It sounds like a really, really cool idea, but I guess it just needs to be tested really, really thoroughly and proven over and over again to make sure that we feel more comfortable when it comes round to actually using it. A quick point on MetaMask and kind of being the trusted one, just kind of a side point, but I'm definitely looking for an alternative now. I've got a couple in mind. I think that they have genuinely been overtaken in terms of product for wallets by a couple of others. So I think that's something I want to explore more, particularly as we were talking about yesterday. And, given the nature of this space, people will be interested that airdrops seem to be around the corner now. We have noticed over and over again that a couple of them are coming to life. We reported yesterday how the Rainbow wallet was teased an airdrop. They didn't say that there would be one. As we said, no one ever actually says that there will be one, but they started teasing some points and how users could be rewarded. So, and I believe their product is very, very good. I think I actually set one up at some point in time. I need to double check. But yeah, I'm very open to looking at those things. Any final points on that, Legendary, before we get into the Web3 roundup and the final headline?
Yeah, one security point that I kind of would like to make on that alternative wallet exploration, because I'm not using MetaMask. Like, I still have it, but I just use it for websites that don't work with the other wallet that I'm using.
Sure.
And I think one of the main features, and there's not only one wallet, so it's not me shilling a specific wallet, there's multiple wallets who support that, like Phantom or Rebby, is transaction simulation. This is the best thing ever.
Tell us about that. What is that?
Transaction simulation is such a good security feature. When you sign a transaction, you have a certain expectation. So say you're on a website, your expectation is to claim an airdrop, for example.
Yes.
And what transaction simulation does is it shows you the outcome of the transaction that you're about to sign. So if your expectation is, you're claiming your Optimism airdrop, it should show you pay gas fees and you will get 500 Optimism for the sake of simplicity. And if you're on a phishing site, then you might be thinking that you're claiming your Optimism airdrop, but in reality, you're giving out an approval to have your Chromie squiggle transferred out of your wallet to the scammer.
Sure.
And transaction simulation does exactly that. It shows you, wait, this is, what will happen if you sign the transaction in pictures and images and text that is easy to understand. And if that matches your intent, obviously you want to continue with that transaction. If not, then you're probably, about to be scammed. So this is a super valuable feature to have.
That's super valuable. That sounds really, really helpful. I bet, though, Legendary, that as soon as people realize that they have to read the extra simulation to check, there'll definitely be an option pretty soon where it's like, just forget it. Don't look at the transaction simulation. Just skip that. You know how on Google will say, like, whenever they show you a notification, there'll be that option to be like, okay, you've read this now. Don't show me this again. There'll be something like that, and people will just end up, because in the end, most stuff is user error, right? It's not even the fact that sometimes the security doesn't exist. It's just we override it anyway in our stupidity. What do you think about that?
Yes, it is user error if you connect, your wallet to a malicious site. But obviously, even if you're on a malicious site, you could end up there because someone sends you a link with the best of intentions, or I don't know, you Googled 1-inch exchange and you're not using Brave, you're using Chrome, you have sponsored ads for a fake 1-inch exchange site, and just having that extra step that warns you.
Yeah.
And does so very prominently. For example, if you were to transfer an NFT out, that would appear in red -1 board 8. You would have to sign that you've seen that alert. You can't ignore it. You can click that you want to ignore it, but you actively have to click that you're aware that you're ignoring something, or you're clicking that simulation away that wants to notify about a scam. So it is done in a way that definitely will help you catch something, say 90% of the time. Obviously, you still could ignore it, click ignore, and sign.
Sure.
Because in a rush to claim something, and then you still could fall for a scam. But I think it's just a nice extra security step and feature to have.
No, I agree. I think it sounds really good. That does sound helpful. Let's get into the Web3 roundup and the creator corner to get you up to speed with what else has been happening in the space in the last 24 hours. As always, is in the snapshot, which is pinned up top. And then we get into the final headline of the day. Number one, JP Morgan is handling $1 billion worth of transactions in JP coin. I did not know that. The context for that is that the banking giant plans to extend the use of the blockchain-based settlement token to retail investment in the future, retail investors in the future. That's pretty cool. Number two, Base announces $50,000 of grants for those building on Base. Legendary. We need to talk to these L2s. There seems to be a lot of funding available right now. Number three, Fiat partners with Prohibition Art and Art Blocks to celebrate Web3 entry and 500E launch in the US. That's pretty cool. Prohibition Art seemed to be doing very nicely on Arbitrum. Number four, Super Rare launches curated feeds on Rare Protocol, which is a spotlight opportunity. Sorry, wrong one. If you've staked in at least 10 community pools, this is the Rare staking tool. You can now get a feed of the artists who you stake on. So that's a good way to keep up to date with what your staked artists are doing. Onto the creator corner. Number one, Des Lucrece, I don't know how to pronounce that properly, sells out 100 editions of Ghosts for 0.1 ETH to raise 10 ETH. That was yesterday. You may not have known. Great artist. That's pretty cool. Number two, Nouns announces Garden Round, where 10 ETH is up for grabs to bring an idea to life. And finally, Sotheby's announced Thank You X exhibition in Los Angeles in November. Will be continuing to push the boundaries of his practice. The artworks will utilize both traditional and digital mediums. Good to see those traditional institutions doubling down on both digital and physical pieces from Web3 native artists. Legendary, that was the Web3 roundup. That's the creator corner. Let's do the final headline.
Absolutely. Do you want to take it away?
I do. There's not a huge amount of information available on this one, but the key point is that Claynosaurz have announced plushies with the slogan 1 Clayno, 2 Claynos, 3 Claynos, raw. And I guess it's significant because they seem to be really, really popular. I think that's one of the things that has taken me aback. And I remember when someone messaged one day to say, oh, do you guys never cover stuff on Solana? And I said, no, we do, but we are predominantly on ETH. That's where our probably money and attention has been directed. We think that the most economic activity has to date, at least for the best assets, has been there. But we will of course cover it if it kind of comes across our desk. And I think Claynosaurz are just super popular over there, doing really, really well. Wanted to shout them out, and also the Solana ecosystem, because I think that there are a bunch of people who are building really well out there and really passionate about those projects. And yeah, that was my first take. Any quick take on that, Legendary? And then I just wanted to ask about the business model, what you thought about how they were marrying the toys with their focus on content creation, because I know that they've been wanting to focus on the creation of content as well.
Sure. The thing that really stood out for me and that I enjoyed seeing was a bit of the behind the scenes on the design of the plushies specifically, that Cabinimation shared. Whale also had it in a thread that where they showed, you know, the different versions that they had, for example, on how the spacing, you know, between the eyes should look like. How do you want to place the seams on the plushies? How do you shape the nose? Which version looks better or not? Because I think, you know, this all might sound trivial, but I think translating a 3D model into a plushie, translating a 2D pudgy into a 3D plush toy or figure is actually pretty challenging, because you have, you know, manufacturing constraints. You want them to look cute at the first sight, but also be on brand. Because when you see a Claynosaurz plushie, you don't want to think that it's just any random dinosaur, but you want to have the brand identification immediately.
Sure.
Which I think is particularly challenging for that dinosaur sector specifically, because obviously it's a very, very liked toy, and there's so many dinosaur plushies. So actually doing them in a way that they can be brandable and stand out as a Claynosaur is a very challenging thing to do. And that kind of leads into the business model of that. I feel like Pudgies had a bit of an easier stand when it came to that, because I just don't think that penguins are as widespread in toys and as heavily brand dominated as dinosaurs, because dinosaurs are just such a popular motif to use in you know, kids entertainment. So I definitely appreciate seeing those details on how they work to making it brandable and stand out as a Claynosaur and not just be another random dino on the shelf.
Yeah, I think that's cool. I think that all makes sense. Do you think, like, on some level, we talk about the Web3 IP playbook sometimes, and you know, Pudgies have definitely been leading in that respect. They've been doing things which has definitely inspired a lot of people with their success. Claynosaurz seem to be following in that direction. Do you think that this is the playbook now, or do you think that there is scope to do other quite distinct things with the Web3 IP?
I don't necessarily think that plushies are in the playbook for every brand, and Claynosaurz has been doing so much more than just the plushies. They've been working on, you know, the animation work, they've been working on games, etc. I just think that for some brands, especially those who have that, you know, family-friendly appeal, the toy industry is one that's very close to them. But at the end of the day, if you want to build it out as a global brand, it can only be one of many verticals. And I just don't think that this in itself would be enough if the ambition is to be a global brand. It's just one of many product lines. And then the question to me really becomes, if you want to formulate a specific playbook for Web3 brands to become global brands, is where do you start? Do you start with a game? Do you start with a physical product? Do you start with community building, community events? So the order in which you want to do the things to build it up as a sustainable business and to build it up as a global brand. I think this obviously might differ for every project, but figuring that order out is going to be the important part, and of course then the execution on it.
Absolutely, makes sense. Shout out to them over there. Shout out to the Solana community. Like to see some good stuff happening over there. Very good signs. And that brings us to the end of the show, guys. It's been a great show again today, as always. Thank you, Legendary, for co-hosting. Thank you to our speakers, Riggs and Wiz. Sorry I didn't get to you on that point, mate. We were just running out of time. Hopefully hear from you again next week. Have a wonderful weekend. Remember, we have started streaming on YouTube. Would love to hear some of your thoughts about the show. If you have any feedback on how the show is developing, both in terms of the live experience on X, how it's been affected, if at all, by our appearance on YouTube as live human beings, please do let us know. Have a wonderful weekend. Really appreciate you joining us. Take care and enjoy. Bye-bye.